Today we're talking about solving quadratic equations by factoring. So last unit we did a lot of factoring, and basically now if you look down here at these equations, what is the difference?
It's not square.
It's equaling something, okay? And so what happens is we are going to factor and then solve because it's an actual equation that has an equal sign. When you have an equal sign, you have to solve it after factoring, okay? So first thing you want to do is make sure the equation is set equal to 0. And your highest exponent needs to be positive, and you should also make sure it's written in descending order. Once you have all that, I'm going to make this a little bigger here. Then you'll set the factors, each of the factors equal to 0, and solve after you factor. Okay. So whenever we're factoring, what is the first thing we should always check for?
GCF.
Is there GCF on number 1 here?
4.
Very good. There is a 4. So we take out a 4, we divide each of these terms by 4, and what am I left with?
4x squared minus 9.
Okay, when you have two terms, you want to check to see if they're squares or cubes. In this case, what are they? Squares. 4 is 2 squared, and 9 is 3 squared. So when we factor this, Andrew, you really need to pay attention, okay? When we factor this, we have 4, and we get 2x minus 3 and 2x plus 3. Can I factor that any further? No. So at this point now, so first thing we did, make sure the equation is set equal to 0. The next thing we did was factor. The third thing is you're going to set each of the factors equal to 0 and solve. So here are all of my factors. So what I'm doing is I'm setting each of them equal to 0. So starting here, we have 4 equals 0. We have 2x minus 3 equals 0. And we have 2x plus 3 equals 0. 4 equals 0. Does that make any sense?
No.
No. So that one's out. That one's done. We don't have to do anything else. Okay? Next one. Can I solve that?
Yes.
Yes. What would I do?
That's 3.
Good. First thing you do is add 3 to both sides. We get 2x equals 3. And then the last step would be to, good, divide by 2. So I get x equals 3 over 2. Then we do the same thing for the third equation. I subtract 3 to both sides. 2x equals negative 3, and we divide by 2 to get x equals negative 3 over 2. So those are my answers. X equals, and you notice how one of these is positive and one of these is negative? Instead of writing 3 over 2 and negative 3 over 2, you can write plus or minus 3 over 2, and that stands for positive and negative 3 over 2, just to make it less to write. But you could do it either way. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
All right, example 2. Is it set equal to 0?
Yes.
Yes. Next step is to check for
GCF.
GCF.
No, you can do
5,
P.
5p. Very good. So we are taking out a 5p, which means we are dividing each of these terms by 5p. And what am I left with?
9p plus 2.
Very good. 9p plus 2 is correct, and this equals 0. Can I factor that any further? No. So this is where we set each of our factors equal to 0. So we have 5p equals 0 and 9p plus 2 equals 0. 5p equals 0. What would I do to this problem? Very good. We would divide by 5. And what is 0 divided by anything? 0. So p equals 0. What is the difference between that one and this one?
That's equals 4.
Good. This one has a letter. This one does not. Okay? So the difference is you can have a letter equal 0, but a number can't equal 0. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then here, what am I going to do? Good. Subtract 2 first. So we have 9p equals negative 2, and last we divide by 9. Good. So my answers are p equals 0 and -2/9. What do you think we're going to need to do first on number 3? Good. And we are going to move the 8m over here because you always want your highest exponent to be positive. So I don't want to move my m squared and get a negative m squared. I want that to stay positive. So we're going to subtract 8m in order to make it equal to 0. So those cancel out. We have m squared minus 8m equals 0. And then what do we always check for first? A GCF. Is there a GCF here?
Yes.
Yes, m is correct. So we take out an m, and we divide each of these by m, and what am I left with?
M minus 8 equals 0.
M minus 8, good, equals 0. Isaiah, you getting all this?
And we can't factor anything.
Good, and we always check if we can factor further, but I can't. And so next I,
Make our 2 equals.
good, make your equations equal to 0. Each of our factors equal to 0. So we have m equals 0, and we have m minus 8 equals 0. There's nothing to do here. M just equals 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do I do over here?
Solve.
Solve, and we,
Add 8 and we get M equals 8.
good. So my answers are m equals 0 and 8.
I know what we do in the third part.
Okay, good. Don't say it. Let somebody else answer since you know. Since you know, you know. All right, example 4. Before I can do anything, what does it need to be set equal to? 0. And in order to make it set equal to 0, I have to, good, subtract 54. So these cancel. We get x squared minus 3x minus 54 equals 0. And notice that I wrote it in what kind of order?
Descending.
Very good. Okay, so which number is my multiplication number?
54.
Close. Negative 54. And which one is my adding number?
3.
Close.
Negative.
Good.
So you could go negative 9 plus 3.
Does that make 54?
Yes, negative 9 times positive 3.
Close. Negative 9 and positive
6.
6. It's okay.
I was thinking about the factoring part.
You're okay. So we have x, and you guys told me it is plus 6 and x minus 9. So if we double check these do multiply to equal a negative 54, and these do add to be negative 3. Okay? Sometimes there's 2 that will work for one of the numbers but not for the other. So you need to make sure they always work. And then this equals 0. Okay, so now what?
Solve your 2 equations.
Good. So we set them each equal to 0. X plus 6 equals 0. And x minus 9 equals 0. Okay, the first one we just subtract 6 to both sides and we get x equals negative 6. Here we add 9 to both sides and get x equals
Positive 9.
9. So x equals negative 6 and 9 are my 2 answers.
That's very good.
So far so good?
Yeah.
No. Not at all. Yeah, you can put any order. Okay, moving on.
Did you guys all notice that we also in our today?
I think they did. Say that again. Oh, I have it on the next page, I think. Is it the 16 one?
Yeah.
Yeah? Is this your next one? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So, what always needs to be positive?
Highest number. So you need
Your highest exponent. So, what am I going to do?
to move over 16x minus 64 to the x squared side.
Good. So we're going to move these two things to the right because you always want your highest exponent to be positive. Is that okay? So when I move, we have a negative 16x. I'm moving over here.
And a positive 64.
And a positive 64. Exactly. Okay, so these cancel, these cancel. We will write them in descending order. Yes, Marcus.
Why don't you want the highest exponent?
Because when you're factoring, you need it to be positive. And so you would end up having to move things around or factoring out a negative anyways. So to save time, it's easiest to move it to the side of the highest exponent. Okay? So when you're factoring, your like first term needs to be positive. Okay? When it's in descending order. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this now. We have x squared minus 16x plus 64 equals 0. If you have equals 0 on the left side, that's fine, or the right side. I just like it to always look like this. So once I move it, I just put it equals to 0 on the right. Okay? So now, and again, notice I wrote this in descending order. My adding term is negative 16, and my multiplying term is 64, a positive 64. So did we figure out what?
Yeah, you're right.
Very good. We get x minus 8 and x minus 8 equals 0. Do you think I need to set up two equations? No, because once you know what x minus 8 equals, or that x minus 8 equals 0 and we solve it, I don't need to solve that twice, right? Do you think I need to write the answer twice? No. Okay? You don't have to write the answers twice. If you have the same answer, you just write it once. Okay? So my answer's 8. All right. What?
Sounds like you said my answer is A.
Oh, it is 8. E-I-G-H-T 8. Okay.
You're like being all sassy over there about it.
That's right. All
I
right.
knew what you meant. I'm saying what it.
Find the zeros of the function by rewriting the function in intercept form. Okay, whenever you see an equation that has x and y, it can be graphed. Okay, so think about your coordinate plane, your x and y axis. Whenever you have an x and y in an equation, that can actually be a line that can be graphed, or a different type of graph. This is not a line because it has an x squared. Anytime you have an x squared, it actually makes what type of graph? Does anybody know? A U-shaped graph, which in mathematical language is called a... No. Nice try, though. This makes a parabola.
Oh.
Is that what you guys were going to say? Yeah, I thought so. So anytime you have a squared term, an x squared term, you're going to end up with a parabola. So if you think about it, you know your parabola makes a U-shaped graph, right? Going either up or down. How many times does it cross the x-axis normally?
Twice.
Twice. And it could be just once because your parabola could be something like this, where it just hits the x-axis one time as well. Okay? But what you're doing is if you factor this right here and set each of your factors equal to 0, those will tell you the points that the parabola is crossing the x-axis. So that's what we're going to do. So even though this says y equals, we are going to factor and set each of our factors equal to 0.
But we're not graphing it.
We're not going to graph. We're just going to find what it's crossing. I just wanted you to know what you're actually finding.
Do we graph later?
Yes. So you need to know how to graph too, but yes. Yes. Similar to the green poster. We're going to be talking more about graphing parabolas later, and you're right, that Kelly Green, Hunter Green, whatever, poster on the wall is talking about graphing parabolas.
Which one?
The darkest green.
Okay.
All right, so anyways, right now, today, you do not have to graph these. I just want you to understand what it is that we're finding, and it could be graphed. So this is set equals a y, which really we're going to end up setting them equal to 0. But we're going to factor this part. So we know that this is our adding number, and this is our multiplying number. So what multiplies to be negative 30 and adds to be 7?
10 and 3. 10 minus 3.
10 and 3, do we agree?
10 and negative 3.
Good. So we're going to have x plus 10 and an x minus 3. And we're going to end up setting each of our factors equal to 0. So x plus 10 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0.
And then you get x negative 10. And then you get x equals positive 3.
Perfect. So we get our two answers. But we all know that these points, these values, actually mean that this parabola would have a point at negative 10 on the axis and a point at positive 3 on the axis, and then it would be curving. Does anybody know if this would curve up or down? Just up. So anytime you have a negative in front, it curves down, but there's no negative in front, therefore it would curve up. Okay, so x equals negative 10 and 3.
Cool,
Wait,
next.
so we don't solve them.
What do you do with the y?
The y is just telling you it's part of the equation, or like that it's y equals, it's telling you it's a parabola. So really what we could have done is put equals 0 at the beginning, because we're just plugging in 0 for y to find where it crosses the x-axis. Okay? So don't worry about the y. Basically, you could rewrite this now as 0 equals x squared minus 10x plus 25, because we want to find out where it's going to cross the x-axis.
And that's x minus 5, x minus 5.
Good. Okay, so when this one factors, you have x minus 5 and x minus 5. Do I need to set both of those equal to 0?
No.
No. How many times is this one going to cross the x-axis?
5. Once. Once.
Once. It is only going to cross the x-axis at 5.
Fine.
It's okay. So on this one, like we kind of already talked about, you would go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, make a point, and then this would be your parabola going up like that.
Zero equals x minus 5
0 equals x minus 5 squared.
squared.
Yeah, that's the same thing. You can rewrite this as x minus 5 squared. Okay. Any other questions on this?